Here's a quick walkthrough of a brand new MOGRT I made. It is a CRT monitor pixelation style effect. Like all my other MOGRTs, it's super easy to use. Drag and drop, minimal clicks, no keyframing whatsoever. Everything is controlled as much as possible with simple sliders. So to just start from scratch here, I'll clear out the timeline. If you've never used a MOGRT, you access them in the graphics templates panel. This little button here, install motion graphics template. Click it, navigate to wherever on your computer the MOGRT file itself is located, and then you should see it pop up here. So I'm just going to drag this over. I'll change the sequence settings just to match it. Let's just drop in real media so we can get a better look. Okay. This is what you get right off the bat. I can see it on my end. The pixelation effect is certainly there. With the screen recording, watching it compressed on YouTube or wherever you're watching this might not read as well, but it is certainly there. I'll go full screen just so you can get so you can see a little better full screen. For what it's worth, the slow motion effect is built into the stock footage, so this effect is not actually doing slow-mo. So I guess we'll just go top to bottom here. I'll show you this later, slow zoom in and out. It has a slow, like Ken Burnsy kind of zoom in out capability built in, but it's not really something that I think you need for moving footage. That might be better to explain with a still photo, so we'll get to that later. Scale image. So scale image just kind of scales it up and down, and when I do that you can really see the grid effect underneath. That's how the pixels are generated. It's a grid effect in After Effects. Now why would you want to do this is if you want to see bigger pixels, for example. So if you wanted to see bigger pixels, you might scale down up here. And these are sort of the master image settings. So when I do this, when I scale this down to 75%, this image that you're seeing is what's actually being sent to After Effects. So you need to scale it back up to compensate. And that has the effect of scaling up the grid effect, which is what creates the pixels in After Effects, if that makes sense. So let me just drop it down to 50 for an even more extreme example. And you can see every time I do this, the pixels are getting bigger. I kind of like this more minimalist, subtle thing. Let's just keep going down. The flicker is pretty self-evident. It's on 3 by default. If you put it at 0, now there's no flicker. If you put it at 5, there is quite a bit more flicker. I think that's a pretty cool effect. It's just a subtle dynamism that kind of reads more like vintage CRT monitor. All right, so let's leave it at 4, I guess. Image, so these are sort of your color correction settings. Once you apply the pixel effect, it does have a tendency to darken. Like this is by default. And let me just show you, I'll drop a just plain instance of the stock footage. So yeah, you can see as I toggle it on and off, you can see there's just a darkening kind of native to this effect when you drop it on. So by default, 10 is kind of a compensatory exposure boost. You can see it's still a little darker with it on. So if you want, you can always punch it up, and there now you can see it's a little more equal. As you can see, dialing up the exposure is also killing off some of your highlights, but honestly not in a way that's that bad to me, because like we're going for that vintage lo-fi CRT effect. Those monitors do have a tendency to kind of blow out. Subjective, I suppose, but anyway, for just purely like matching the overall exposure, maybe you want to bump it up to 20, whatever, tweak as needed. Temperature is pretty self-explanatory. These are all just basically lumetri controls under the hood. I don't know, sometimes these CRT monitors go blue and green, and if you want to dial that in, this is where you would do that. Saturation, same deal. That's fine, whatever. For the sake of example, text, so you can actually add text to the effect. And there it is. And you can see it's the text layer gets that pixelation too. I have Acumen Pro as the default. I'm not sure I like that as the default. I might have to change the default in future versions. Sans serif fonts aren't particularly vintage in my opinion, but you can just put whatever font you want. You can change the color as you might expect from any text editor, all the basic text editing functions that you would use most often. Tracking is a good one to have, so that's in there. Drop shadow, I guess, yeah, drop shadow is there by default. Just because if you're using this effect for text, chances are you want it to be red. And with all the other just visual flourish going on, having a drop shadow by default just makes things that much more legible. You can always turn it off if you don't want it. Distance, these are all just your basic drop shadow controls. The size, that's it for drop shadow. Oh, line spacing is another. If this were a 2-line, as seen here, you can change the distance of the second line, or of all the lines rather, if you had more than 2. And then line spacing, also you can change where exactly it is. This could be useful if you wanted to kind of set up a mock left, center, or right orientation. You know, this is not a super robust text editor. There aren't formal like paragraph controls, but this should cover your bases for whatever you're trying to do. I'm going to get rid of the text for now because it's not really about the text here. It's just a feature that you can put in if you like. Effects. All right, so this is some visual effects I've added in. Chromatic aberration is just sort of like the bending of the various color channels that is very common to CRT monitors of old. You can dial it up and down. 10, obviously quite intense and a little unrealistic, but almost kind of dreamlike, pretty cool. Maybe to 5 or 6 is more typical. And yeah, it's more kind of on the fringes of the image. Let me get rid of this. On the fringes of the image is where you see it. But once you add this effect with the flicker and the kind of just general resolution loss you get from adding these pixels in, it suddenly starts to feel like something pretty cool and old school. And that's from not really doing anything, just checking a few checkboxes on and off, a few sliders up and down to taste. But that's the idea, just kind of give you this quick and easy CRT look. Point of interest. The way the effect works underneath is there's sort of a center point from which the effect gets more and more intense the further away from that center point you get. So this basically lets you move that center point. It's called a point of interest. You can just adjust it to taste. No real right or wrong there. It's just up to you. All right, lens blur. Is the lens blur effect, if you've ever messed with that in After Effects. It's basically just another way to degrade the image in a way that is true to old monitors. 20 is pretty extreme. If you're doing it just kind of universal across the entire image, you probably won't want to go above, I don't know, 4 or 5, but because it just degrades the whole quality overall. And after a certain point, it just looks like something is out of focus. But we can also create a negative mask where the effect will not be applied. So to check that on, check this lens blur mask, and then you can see right away that the center just got a lot clearer. So there's a mask in the center within which the effect is not applied. So you can see it's still blurry on the outside, but not at all on the inside. This is another one where you can move that mask around, and now you can see it's sharper over here and blurrier where it just was. I'll undo that. For this effect, you don't have to just eyeball it, because this is a pretty subtle effect, and it's kind of hard to see where it is and isn't on. So I've added this mask guide feature where you can check this on, and that's the mask. So the mask I was just talking about, that's it. Now when you move this around, everything under this is essentially what's not getting the lens blur effect. So those will be the areas that are sharper. So I've just moved it to, well, I'll move this over to the left side of the frame for example's sake, and check this off. And yes, now you can see on the left side of this image, it is now sharp again, and now on the right side, it is blurry. Check it back on. Our subject is right about here. So that's really where I want it to be sharp, and there you go. It is sharp around the subject. Now, another cool thing you can do though is shrink the size of the mask. So we want really just the subject to be exempted from this blur effect. We could shrink the mask down like this, check it off, and now what you can see is this really tight boundary around our subject and around which everything else is much blurrier. So we give that a play. Again, our mask is right around here, so she's going to basically run into that position in the frame, into focus. Just kind of draws the eye and degrades the rest of the image in a way that is pretty cool. Or the last section will be vignettes. Vignette 1 is sort of an oval shape in the middle. You've got your vignette controls here: opacity, feather, mask expansion. These are just general controls that you might expect if you were adding a mask in After Effects. Vignette 2 is like a beam of light from right to left. I think for this particular MOGRT, this is what we'll use because it kind of feels true to where the light source is in this image. Vignette 3 is the opposite, a left to right light source, but like I said, this one is more true to Vignette 2, right to left. So you can dial in the opacity, the feathering, etc. to taste, mask expansion, Something like that is probably what I want to do. And then we've got the last effect here is hotspot. Hotspot introduces as described, a hotspot into the frame. Sometimes old CRT monitors have hotspots, so if you want to dial in an effect like that, you can. I think it kind of works best as this, nothing too crazy. I mean, you can go crazy with it if you want, but almost like just a more subtle thing. Like if it's there, you can't tell, but if you take it away, you can. For example, you know, here it is at 0, here it is at 36, on, off, on, off. It's just a little something that draws the eye without being too in your face. It's one of those kind of effects. I think that's how it works best. So that's pretty much it. If you like what you see, this MOGRT is available on Gumroad. My website is videowizard.io. And that link actually takes you to my Gumroad page where you will see this MOGRT as well as all the others I have ever made. This demo was for version 1.0. I've already identified a few areas that I think could be updated soon, but just note that if you do purchase this version, this 1.0 version, you'll be able to get the new version for free. You won't have to purchase it again. So yeah, check it out, videowizard.io. If you have any questions or comments, you can drop them down below and I will get back to you. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, and we will see you on the next video.